So we're going to learn 2 new techniques, and then it's all going to be about nodes and texturing, okay? We're actually going to use the default cube for this, for both of them. Everyone just throws it out, but we're going to find a use for it tonight. Is everyone all set? When you've got objects selected and you tab into edit mode, you'll be editing those objects. So we're going to have just this one cube, the default, and we're going to tab into edit mode. Was everyone able to do that? Follow me on this. It's still selected. You could hit A to make sure it's all selected. All the vertices, edges, faces, they're selected. We're going to duplicate this, move it and rotate it. So we're going to go Shift D to duplicate, then Z to lock it on the Z. All right, now here's a hot tip. If you use your tilde key to switch your view, we're going to go to the front view. The top duplicate is still selected, right? If I hit R and rotate, if you're in a pure straight on view, like from the front or from the side, you will only rotate on one axis. Because watch what happens. Don't do what I do. Watch, and I'll show you. So I'm going to go to a perspective view. Look, it's spinning all around. You know what I mean? I'm going to undo that. It's always better. What did I say? Front view? Yeah. It's always better to rotate it straight on because then you're only rotating on one axis. Got it? When you can. I'm going to want to move this sideways. So that's going to be my X. So I'm going to go GX, slide it to about there. We just moved it. So we rotated it and then moved it. So it looks like this now. Okay. If yours doesn't match mine, that's fine because we're learning a technique. So it doesn't need to be exact. Remember, here's your selection. 1 is vertice, 2 is edge, 3 is face. So I'm going to hit 3 for faces. This face that's facing it and that face. I'm going to hit X, delete faces. Now I've got 2 open boxes facing one another. Okay. Are you ready to have your socks blown off? Okay, did you all bring cowbells and party whistles? I'm going to press 2 to go to my edge select. All right. If I just click, I select one edge. But if I hold down Alt or Option when I click, I get an edge loop, all the edges that are connected. Okay. So you see how I've got all the edges around that top box opening? So I'm going to want another edge loop, but I've got to hold down Shift to add to that selection. So it's Shift Alt and get that edge loop. Zoom in so you can see a little better. Shift Alt or Shift Option on a Mac. And you should have 2 full edge loops selected. No big deal. So it's edge. I hold down Alt or the Option key, hold down Shift, and I get that. All right. So we're all on the same page. Watch this. So I'm going to rotate a little bit just so you can see what's going on. See that? This is the lazy, cool way of doing it. You're going to want to right click on one of those selections and you want to choose Bridge Edge Loops. Only click one time. Do not click a second time. So click one time on Bridge Edge Loops. And what's going to happen, oh, even cooler, wait, watch this. See right here, the review panel at the corner? Under number of cuts. If you increase that, look what happens. Got that? So now we've got this happening. And then smoothness. Look, you can change the curve of it. All right. You can also, there's a twist. I think twist is right here. See, you can twist as you go along. You got to delete 2 faces of 2 objects and it will connect them. All right. You can do it on a curve. So what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to make a quick subway scene and you're going to want to curve the guardrail, like the handrail that people use walking down the stairs. This edge loop is the fast way of doing that without having to be like knowing a bunch of math or changing an anchor point to rotate along. This does it for you. All right, I'm going to tab out of edit mode and look at that. Ta-da. Okay. So I'm going to X, delete that. We're going to add another cube. The amazement doesn't stop here. Okay, you thought that was amazing. Wait till you see this. I'm going to scale this up a bunch and just move it above the ground plane. Like that. So G to grab, move it, S to scale. Here's what we're going to do. Right here, the materials, We're going to click on that. And actually over here, remember the top corner, you can change your panel. We're going to want shader editor. So we got our 3D viewport and the shader editor. On the shader editor, I'm going to hit the new button. I don't need this flyout menu, so I'm going to hit N. I'm just going to zoom in with my mouse wheel. We talked a little bit about the principled BDSF shader. BSDF. Base color, that's the most basic one. That's the color. So everyone pick your favorite color. I'm going to do green because green is my favorite color. Right about there. So if you look up at the top, that's wireframe. All right. This is viewport shading. This one will show materials. And this is the rendered view counting in lights and any textures. You got it? So we're just going to click on this one for now. Okay. Oh, so did you click on this one up here? Okay, yeah. So that's why I was just warning you. This is wireframe. This one's solid mode. This shows color. And this is the full lighting, shading, texturing view, the rendered view. We're just doing the second to last one, the material one. Yeah, it's material preview. All right. Everyone ready? Tab into edit mode. Click off the deselect. Just a quick A is select all. Alt A is deselect all. Or Option A on a Mac. I'm going to hit the number 3 to get my face select. I'm going to click on the face that's facing me. I'm going to name this material called green. Hit enter to name it. So you call it whatever yours is. And then is everybody ready? So over here in my materials panel, I'm going to click this plus button right up here. Can everyone see it? I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to hit new. And then I'm going to click this assign button right here. Assign. Okay. So I'm going to think of a color to make this. So if that's green, I'm going to make this one red. Go make it red. And then I'll name it red. Then I'm going to tab out of edit mode. I have one object with 2 different materials applied. This can be anything. So if I click and right here, I select my green, I can go down to roughness, completely get rid of the roughness. So now it's reflective. Or my red, I could make it completely metallic and get rid of the roughness. And for the green, I could also give it like a really high subsurface scattering. So if I go to my view camera, these two will look completely different based upon how the light responds to that material. One object, 2 different materials. I went to edit mode. I chose how many faces I wanted to make the new material. I clicked the plus to add a new material, and then I hit the assign button with those selected faces. We are going to delete this cube. Here is where we take what we just learned and we kick it up to my level of where I want you to be. Edit. Preferences. Add-ons. I want everyone to please make sure you have Node Wrangler clicked on. Node Wrangler. Yeah, you can have them turned on if you want, but the main one is Node Wrangler. Okay. And if you had to turn it on, always hit save and load afterward. Okay. We're going to go to Canvas, this class, files. Okay. Then the root folder. Inside the root folder, I made a folder called Blender. Okay. In here, I've got photos of some node trees for you to have for reference. I've got a PDF of some stuff, for you guys for reference. And I want you to go to the Polyhaven folder. Okay. And download all the files in Tiles Onyx and concrete floor worn. All right. All of them. Keep them named the same way. Just copy all the images out of it. I think you just download the whole folder. Shift A, mesh, cube. We've got our cube again. All right. This time I want you scaled up pretty big, like about that big. And G to grab, Z, put it above the floor plane. And we're there. I'm going to remove this front face and treat this as a little isometric room. It's going to be a subway, like a subway hallway. So I'm going to hit tab, click off. I still have my face select. So I'm going to hit X faces to delete them. Now I've got my light shining inside the box. And I'm going to tab out. Oh, well, that's because of where it is in location to the light. And speaking of which, I'm just going to move this up with G for grab, Z. Let's move it over to about there. And I'm in my rendered view, the very last box. And when you're all set, just let me know. We just removed the face, I moved the light, went back to object mode. Oh, when I said we were only learning that one modeling technique, I was wrong. I'm going to show you one more because I'm benevolent. I've got to stop being so giving. When you're all set, just give me a thumbs up. Before we do Node Wrangler, I'm going to show you that one modeling tip. No, actually, we're going to model it afterwards, and I'll show you why the thing did what it did and all that. Okay, so we've got our box selected. So just make sure it's selected. Do you still all have your shader editor opened at the bottom? You can get to it here. Shader editor. So you got your viewport, 3D viewport, and shader editor, right? Here we go. Watch this. I'm going to hit the new button to create a new material. Everyone with me? You've got Node Wrangler, the add-on, turned on. It's built into Blender, but it's turned off by the default. And everyone says it should automatically be turned on. Here's why. You ready? On a PC, it's Control, Shift, and the letter T. Object mode. Okay, good. There's our material. Command Shift T. Select all of them. There we go. Now let me hit. All right. I had to box select all of them. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and redo. To make Node Wrangler work, you have to select the principal shader first, then hit Control Shift T. Go to where you save the texture you want. You have to select all of them, then click that. I'm going to Control A, apply all transforms to that cube. And I'm going to go into my mapping over here. Let me know when you get to the mapping. This works the same as the 3D viewport. Mouse wheel in and out will zoom you in and out. Holding down the middle mouse will pan you around. And you can grab any node you want, hit G to grab and move it. We're going to be looking at mapping. And then the scale section. Okay, these tiles are too large. If I click and drag down, I'll get all three of my axes at the same time. Click and drag down like that. And I'm going to try 3 and then hit the enter key. Now that's a better size for the tile. The smaller you go, the less it's repeated. So it's larger. So you always want it to be more realistic. I wanted smaller tiles, so I increased the number of the scale so it's repeated more frequently. This is an example of PBR, physically based renders. It's taking real materials and applying them in a realistic fashion. Everyone got that? This is done through photos. That's why I use Node Wrangler, and you get this very complex node tree of what's happening. You got that concept. Now it's my job to say, we're kicking it up a notch. Everyone ready? We're in object mode. We're going to tab to edit mode. We still have face select, number 3. We're going to select the floor. Now remember, over here, I'm still selected on my materials properties. If I want to have 2 materials for one object, I click plus over here, and then I hit assign. Well, new, and then assign. All right, so the first one, I'm going to call tile wall. Second one, I'm going to call concrete floor. Okay. To use Node Wrangler, you just click on the principled BSDF node and hit CTRL SHIFT T. Now you're going to go to where you save the concrete floor images. And yeah, you're going to go to textures. Then you go select all of them and then hit a principled texture setup. And there's your node tree. Once more, you're going to notice this texture's too big. I'm going to try 5. I'm just throwing it out there. It's going to be somewhere between 2 and who knows what. So you hover over one of the coordinates, the XYZ on the scale, and that's in the mapping. So I'm going to hover, click and drag down, and I'm going to try 5. 5's a bit big. So I'm going to do the same thing, hover, click and drag. Let's try 3. Yeah, I'm happy with 3. I can live with that. And we are still in edit mode. It's one object, 2 different materials, and you just learned how to use Node Wrangler for physical-based renders. Fairly painless so far, right? Well, then my job's not done. So I want everyone to be crying by the end of class. Is everybody ready? We're still in edit mode. I'm going to hit the number 2 to get edge select right up there. I'm going to click on that front edge of the cement floor. Everyone with me so far? I want to make steps. Here's a lazy way to make those steps. I'm going to look at my gizmo. I'm going to E extrude down. So it's going to be E, Z to extrude down. E, Z, and whatever depth I want the steps to be at. Okay? Then I'm going to look at my gizmo. Y for me is the direction I want to go because I want to go out that way. So I'm going to go E, Y, and make it the width of the step that I want it to be, like about that much. And I was just using my mouse wheel to pivot around. Now here's the second new thing I'm going to show you. I'm going to go 3 for face select. I'm going to click on the first extrusion I did, the down step. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the extrusion for the front of the other step. Watch this and be ready to be amazed. I'm going to hit the letter P as in peanut butter. So I hit P and I get a menu. Separate. Separate selection. Now, right here, I'm going to name this stairs. It's a separate object that meets up perfectly with the floor. So if I click on the eyeball, the steps are gone. Everyone get what we just did? We extruded the faces, kept the selection, then separated it by what we had selected. So it's its own object. Then my job is not done yet. I'm going to select those stairs in my outliner. And I'm going to go to my modifier right here, the blue wrench. The blue wrench is your modifier to get to your modifiers in the properties panel. I'm going to add a modifier, and that modifier is going to be array. It's the top one under generate. If your screen's a little small, sometimes you got to mouse up, but it's right there under generate, array. Okay. That did both buildings, which it should not have. That's weird. Let me delete that. Let me drag it out of there. Okay. Mine was still parented to the cube. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to, come on. I'm going to hit tab to go back to object mode. I'm in object mode. So there's my stairs selected. I'm going to go add array. Now it's working. Usually you add your modifiers in object mode, not edit mode. Long day, my bad. So I'm going to do about 12 for my count. X is wrong, but look at Z. Z is looking pretty good. So I'm going to do Z1. That's the height there. X, let's try 0. Let's spin that camera around. Okay, so the Z is good. X, I want it to go out properly. So it's going to be, no, let's try Y. Yeah, because my axis right here, Y is the dimension I want to go. So I'm going -1. I'm going to stop at -1. 1 second. Okay. I'll show you yours in a second. Does anyone want to guess why I chose 1 and not a fraction or a decimal? 1 is the total space it occupies. So I'm going total space down, total space out. That's why 1 and 1 worked. The trick for the edge join. So what I'm going to do, just so I'm not distracting myself, I'm going to click right here. This is my viewport overlays. I'm going to turn off the floor just so it's not distracting me. And everyone look at my steps. They look weird, okay? Can everyone see that? Here's what happened. I'm going to click on my steps. It's right here in my mapping. UV. I did not UV unwrap those steps, okay? So what I'm going to do, your texture coordinates, you're either going to mostly be using generated or UV. I'm just going to choose generated. And now my steps look a lot better. And I can say, let's change the scale on that texture. Let's try 1. No, let's try 5. And that's looking better. Additionally, I can say, let's try rotating a little bit. I'm going to try 90 degrees on the Y. And now those ugly lines are gone. I did all that in the mapping part. I changed the scale, and then the rotation I did 90. It changes the way it's rotated. So for the floor, it was fine the way it was. But for the stairs, I just rotated it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, did this. Oh, that's a good, okay. So here's how to fix that. I'm going to hit undo, undo, undo. All right. Good catch. Like I said, long day. I'm going back to my materials right here, okay? Here's the fix for it. I am not hitting the plus. This little button next to the shield, if I click that, I've now got the same material, but a duplicate of it. So on this one, I'm going to keep it at generated, keep it at 5, set this to 90, and hit OK. Now on the other one, when I select that, that's the original concrete floor. I'm going to drag that back to UV and change this to 3. So now I've got the same texture, but applied in 2 different ways. That's the difference between hitting the plus, the number by the shield. Okay. How to what? This one? Oh, so here's the funny thing. So look, I'm using my material for that because it's one object. So I'm going to click on concrete floor. And you'll notice the concrete floor is UV vector with this. And then if I click on my stairs, this one is generated with a rotated and a different scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to get to.
Okay. So here's what I'll do. See this little drop down right here? I'm going to make it the old concrete floor. See? So here's what I did. I got my stairs selected. You got your stairs selected? See this little number by the shield? I'm going to click that. So now I've got a duplicate of that texture. It will not change the floor. It's going to change the stairs. Okay? You see that stripe running through it? So Y, let's try 90. Additionally, I'm going to take generated instead of UV mapped. And that fixed it. I didn't even have to change the scale. Most of it was looking for a UV map. There isn't one. Did that fix it for you? All right. all that's left is procedural texturing for the handrail. All right. Make sure you're in object mode. We're going to go Shift A, add a cylinder. And I'm going to try RY90. Nope. So I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to try RX90. For me, it was RX because that's the angle I needed to rotate at. You want it facing the front of the camera. I just moved it with the G key. Let me know when everyone's got it facing this way. All right. I'm going to scale it down because it's too big. And I'll say about that size. All right. Everyone's still good? Okay. Here we go. I'm going to tab into edit mode with my number 3 and choose the front face. I'm looking at my gizmo. For me, I'm going to want to extrude it on the Y going in this direction. So I'm going to go EY. I'm going to go just a little bit past the wall and then stop. Now take a look at what I've got. I've got these long faces. All right. And remember I said before, that's trouble because it'll give you some shading issues. So I'm going to add edge loops, which is Control R. This is the direction I want them. If I mouse wheel, I can add multiple ones. So I basically want them evenly spread out throughout the length of my rail. I hit left to accept. If I want to slide them back and forth, this is when I do it. I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit left to accept again. And there's my edge loops. And that's some pretty good looking, evenly spaced stuff. Control R. And then do you have the slice going in the direction that mine was? Then mouse wheel to make the number of cuts you want. And then you hit left to accept it. And then left click again so they don't move. All right. You good, Shalia?
Yeah.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit A to select all. All right. I'm going to look at my gizmo. For me, it's Y. So I'm going to hit Shift D Y to duplicate it on the Y. So it's coming straight out and away from the railing. All right. Now I want to be straight onto this. So let's try front view. Nope. Let's try right view. That's where I want to be. I'm looking at it from my right. You could look at it from your left, whatever you want. You both have a front on view of it like this. All right. So I'm going to hit R to rotate. And look, now it's only rotating on the one axis. And I'm going to say about this much. That looks good. You know what? Hold on a second. Wait. I'm going to hit right. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see my stairs. There they are. It's fine. I can barely see them. So I'm going to change my angle a little bit to match those stairs. So I'm going to tilt it just a little bit more. Like about that. Now I'm going to want it to move down. So that's going to be my Z. So I'm going to go G, Z to about there. All right, I'm going to zoom in a bit. We're going to delete these two faces. So I'm going to hit 3 to get my face select. And I'm going to delete this face at the end of my rail by hitting X, faces. I'm going to do the same for this face at the end of this rail. I'm going to hit X, faces, and I've got 2 open faces. All right, so I'm going to go to 2 for my edge select. I'm going to want a loop. So I'm going to hold down Alt to get that whole loop. For you, it would be Option. And I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt so I can get that whole loop. So I've got just these 2 whole loops of the faces. Do you both have that? All right. I'm going to move this down a little bit so I've got some space. I'm going to right click and choose Bridge Edge Loops. And I'm going to add my number of cuts. I'm going to adjust the smooth. I'm going to give it no twist. There we go. Until it looks about right. I'm saying that's pretty close, so I'll click out of it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. And I'm going to tab out of my edit mode. Here's my last steps. I'm in object mode. I'm going to right click on my handrail. I'm going to choose shade smooth. Now we've got some goofy stuff happening. Remember, whenever you shade smooth, click on the green triangle for your vertices down here in your properties panel. You're going to go to normals and you'll click on auto smooth, and that bad shading is history. I'm going to name this rail just so that everybody knows what it is. All right. Now I'm going to give myself some space for a node tree, and I'm going to hit save. I'm going to open this up and show you. So let's see, node tree, handrail. This is the node tree I created for this handrail. I've got a texture coordinates, and I'm going to use generated because we did not UV unwrap it. I applied a Musgrave texture and a noise texture, and I mixed them together with this mix node, going into a color ramp that's only grayscale value. I did not choose pure black. You'll see what's going to happen with that. So I'm just discussing it, then I'll do it all manually. I have the color of this going into the roughness of the principled BSDF. What that means is based upon the light and dark values, parts of the railing are going to be smooth and reflective, and parts of it are going to look grimy. So like the oils on people's hands, wipe them clean. Got it? That's what that's doing. Then I'm going out to a bump map to give it the tiniest little bit of bump into this normal. That's going to make it not smooth metal because things get dinged and bumped over time. So it's going to look worn. Then all that's just going out into the material output. So that is what I did. I'm going to do it step by step. First thing I'm going to do is click the new material button with the rail selected. So I'm in object mode. My rail is now selected. You see it lit up orange. I'm going to hit new. And I'm in my shader editor. I'm going to zoom out. There's my nodes. If you've got your preview panel open down here, that's the N key. You could just hide it. All right, so first node I'm creating is the texture coordinate. So I just hit Shift A and I click on the word search. I'm going to type in coord. And there's my texture coordinate. I'm just going to drag it over here. Shift A. Shift A to add when you're in your shader editor, just like adding an object in the 3D viewport. It's always Shift A. Texture coordinate. So if you type in COORD, texture coordinate will pop up. Okay, so the top one is going to be my Musgrave texture, my Musgrave texture. Shift A, I click search, MUSG, and there it is right there, Musgrave texture. I'm just going to put that right there. Now, when you're connecting nodes, you usually do color to color, like purple to purple, you know, gray to gray, green to green. All right. That's usually your surefire way of getting it right. I'm going to go Shift A, search. I'm going to type in, I want noise texture, not white noise. Make sure you click on noise texture. So what I'll be doing is I'm going to click and drag from generated to vector for both of these. And it's going to make a node strand. You always want to make sure your node strands are connected. That's the first thing you look for troubleshooting. Like if this got broken, I'd say, oh, there's nothing feeding into that node. There's something going out, something coming in. You see that? It's going out of the first and into the both of these. You always have to have something feeding in. That's why I start with my texture coordinate, because you look over here, nothing to feed into. Got that? It's all feed out. That's why I start that way. And everything's connected so far in my node tree. I want to mix these two together. There's several kinds of mix. So I'm going to hit Shift A to add, click the word search, and I'm going to type in mix. You do not want to add a mix shader at this point. Mix shader is for mixing shaders like translucent shader, transmission shader, emission shader, you know, that it's for shaders. We're just mixing values. So most of the time you'll be using mix RGB. That's usually your foolproof one, mix RGB. Got it? Now I'm going to go height out at the top into my color 1 at the bottom. I'm going to go color out of my noise into the bottom. You with me so far? I need some space here. So I've got two options. I could box select these nodes and G grab them, or I can add my next node in between here and it'll auto connect them. But I'm going to slide them because there's not enough space. I'm going to add a color ramp. Shift A, search, color ramp. Color ramps have two main uses. I could go color out into here and use it to make a gradient color, going from like blue to red, green to dark green, like a gradient between shades or color. Got it? That makes sense so far? The other thing you can do is you can force textures to become grayscale. Just like in After Effects, when it's grayscale, it could be used as maps. Maps for transparency or blur or displacement. So we're going to go color out of our mix into the FAC. That is factor. Right there. And then we're going to go out two different ways. So I'm going to select these, G, slide them over a little bit. The first one, I'm going to take this color, I'm going to plug it into roughness because I want it to affect how shiny this railing is going to be. See, already we're starting to get some highlights there, and we didn't even start dialing in our look yet. I'm going to add one more node, Shift A, search, bump. I'm going to put it after my color ramp and before my principled BSDF. Okay. I need to go purple to purple for the out. So I'm going to go normal out to normal in of my principled BSDF shader. I need to feed something into this. Bump is the height. That's how much texture something has. So I'm going to take the color, this grayscale value. I'm taking the color of that. I'm plugging it into the height of my bump map. Now, this is going to look ugly real fast. See what happened right there? Normally when you're doing a bump, 0.2 or less is sufficient. So I'm going to try 0.2 because 1 is a full value. And then the distance would be how high it's rising up. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to try 0.03 for my strength. And then my distance will be, let's try 0.6. So that's it for that part of it. Now, in my principled BSDF, this is metal. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crank metallic all the way up, like that. And that's the only change I made to that one node. Now, I'm going to just show you in the interest of time what I did for these values over here. And then I'll show you how to experiment with them on your own. I gave this a scale of 4.5, so it's larger. If you had a smaller, you'd see more of it. My detail, I changed it to 0.5. Already, it's starting to look a lot better. And then the last two for this, I set to 0. Then down here, I chose 4, 3.3, 1 for roughness, and then distortion, 0.3. At the beginning of lab, I'm going to show you what all these nodes do, like distortion and all that. Factor right here. This is how it blends. See how it's changing the way the light interacts with it already? So you can dial that to whatever you like for your scene. Then over here, watch what happens when I change. So if you want to change either of these, you click on it once. So I'm going to set this black one. I'm going to click here to change it. I'm going to make it less than black. And we're going to watch what happens to my railing when I do that. See, it's starting to get a little bit more realistic with the reflection. Black, I think, was too intense. Too strong of a reflection for a subway railing. I'm going to do two things real quick. I'm going to save, and then I'm going to go to I hit tilde, I'm going to go to view camera. Now remember, if you hit N, you go to your view, and then camera to view, this is where you can control your camera more easily. So I'm kind of happy with this because it's showing all my materials and what I want to focus on next. I'm going to want to zoom in on my render view here. So to do that, I'm going to click off of here, mouse wheel up to zoom in, and I can click that back on, hit N to leave it. I'm going to hit save. Everyone ready for the final touches? Here's the final touches. You're in the home stretch. I'm clicking on my camera. We're in Eevee. This is good for like game rendering or quick animations. When you're in Eevee, turn on ambient occlusion, turn on bloom, and turn on screen space reflections. Look at the change in it already. With that railing, looks a billion times better. If you're doing animation, you can click on motion blur. We're going to go to our world setting. And we're going to click color. Now, I don't know if you guys have an HDRI downloaded, but then just choose any HDRI. So I'm going to click Browse HDRI. I'm going to hit Indoor. And you'll look for something that's kind of Subway-esque. Like, I can even try and search. Yeah. So I'm going to download that, okay? We all got the same one. Take a moment to download. And you move it to wherever you want. Mine is going to be my download folder. Is everyone in the world tab? Okay, this little color button next to color, you click that. That's going to open up your options here. We're going to choose environment texture. Whenever you see it flash pink, that means you're missing an image. Okay? So all we do is we click open right here. And this is where we're going to get our HDRI. Mine is right here in my downloads. So I'm just going to select it once, choose open. Now we're starting to see that. But wait a second, we're not done yet. I'm going to go back to my camera up at the top, go to film, and click on transparent. Now it's only popping up in our reflections. Okay. So I'm going to click back on my world, zoom out a little bit, and this is strong. So I'm going to lower the strength in my world settings to about, let's try 0.2. So now we got a little bit of that gritty grime. And if I zoom into my railing, I start checking the reflections. So let's change this gray. Let's try black. And then let's try adjusting there we go. Once I start adjusting my mix, now it's really popping with the reflections on the railing. You're right here on my mix shader. You can adjust that till you get the look you want. And you see your reflections really pop to where you want. If that's a little strong, you can go back here and change the value of your black. You can make it a little weaker until you get the look you want. And that is your introduction to PBR, physical-based render, and then procedural textures that we created with noise and this node tree right here. And then we just added a world environment to get that HDRI map to make it look like it's anchored in the real world. So you learned about the bridge edge loops. You learned about separating your objects. You learned about applying more than one material to the same object. And at the end of the day, you got something cool to show for it. I'm going to zoom in here so that you could leave my node tree up for a second so that everybody could see what I did. And this will be in the recording. And just always remember to hit save. So I'll keep this up for 5 more seconds because you could always pause the video at this point. And then I just want you to see real quick. So I'll leave this up for 1 more moment. All right, here we go. I'm going to go back to my camera view for a second. And I'm going to adjust that a little bit. Watch what's going to happen here. I'm going to go, oops, sorry, wrong button. I'm going to go back to my camera right here. Look at the difference between Eevee and cycles. Remember, when you're learning Blender, it's usually easier to start in cycles because you get better shading and lighting. It's a slower render, but it looks better. So I'm going to change from Eevee to cycles. And then in cycles, I'm going to hit denoise. I'm going to change my number of samples. This is very high. I'll try 200, and then I'll change my max samples to 200. And look at this already. Like, I'm going to go back to my world, and I can make my world a little stronger because cycles has better lighting. Oh, wow. Look at how much better that is at 0.7. You really notice it in the handrail. And then you just give it some time. It'll keep getting stronger and stronger with the render. So if I hit function F12 to go to my render, or you could go here, remember render image to render a still image, or you can go render animation to render your animation. So I'm just going to hit render image, and I'll let this render in the background. I'm zooming out with my mouse wheel, and it'll show right here. It's on sample 4.5 of 200. So this will take like a couple minutes to render this one frame, but you'll get a difference. I mean, you'll get an idea of what cycles can do, especially with PBR physical-based renders and HDRI maps. And also our procedural texture we did for the handrail. And just a reminder, there's no class Thanksgiving Thursday. Also, if you look at the tiles, you can see the tiles really reflecting that HDRI map nicer in cycles. We just have so much better of color and fall off of focus and the fall off of lighting and shadow in cycles as well. And just a reminder, when you're rotating things and transforming them, you want to do Control A and apply all transfers. I mean, you want to hit Control A and apply all transforms, and you'll get your best results, and there won't be weird issues with things down the road. So I'm going to hide this render. If you've got the time, cycles is the way to go. And what I always suggest when people are rendering is to do one frame and a quick compression test. So the compression test in here would be your max samples, and your max samples here. Just make sure you got denoise on, and then possibly adjusting your noise threshold. Adjust those settings and see what you can get by with, because you don't want to waste a lot of time rendering, especially if you're doing animation. I'm going to try something real fast. I'm going to hit Control A, apply all transforms, and because I forgot to do that the last time, but this is already looking a lot better now that I've done that. And I'll also do it here, apply all transforms, and we're good to go. So that was the end of Blender. I'm going to put this up for a second. So that was the handrail, which we just discussed. This right here, now I'm just going to show you this real fast. This is a dirty metal texture I did. And the difference is my mix shader, rather than feeding it into the roughness, I fed it into the base color. So it's colorizing the metal. So you can plug different nodes into different input and outputs to achieve different effects with your procedural texturing. And lastly, I'll keep this up for everyone who wants to take a look at real quick. Let me zoom out a little. This is a more complex node tree. Again, everything has to be connected. And this is a texture we did not use, Voronoi. All of your drop-down menus give you other options for your textures and your noises. So I suggest you experiment with those. And here's an example of using color into the base color, but also, so that mix is going out there. This mix is feeding into the grayscale version, which is creating the bump map. Your bump map always needs to be black and white. To duplicate objects in Blender, you hit Shift D, you can duplicate nodes. So I just duplicated that color ramp. I've got one in color and I've got one in black and white, and I fed that into the bump map. So it's just a little introduction to node trees. They can get very intense, but once you understand the why, everything's got to be connected. If you ever need to break a cut between nodes, you hold down the control key and use your right click and you slice through with a knife and it cuts the node strand.